Morning, Les.
Good morning, Dr.
Okay,
Hanscom.
cheers.
Cheers. There you go. Cheers, everyone. Good morning. Coffee, that is.
So again, we're talking about a topic that's really a big one for me. You've heard my mother was a chronic pain. I'm sorry, I don't like the word chronic pain patient. That's a label. So she suffered from chronic pain. So I did not know what was going on. I only figured this out about 10 years ago. And she'd just go into these rages off and on. She'd be upset about this, and this, and then she'd be incredibly remorseful afterwards. So the effect of chronic pain in the family to me is a big deal. But there's one issue that I really realized a while back is that you come home from work and you've had a bad day at work or a bad day at the claims examiner or something, and you come home and you want to vent to your family. Not even necessarily taking your family as the targets, you just want to vent. Well, I used to do that a lot. And about 15 years ago, my wife just said, stop, quit doing that. I go, what do you mean? I had a bad day. Who do I talk to? She said, look, that's your problem, not mine. This is our home. Don't bring it home. And it took me a while. It took me probably 6 months to stop doing this, but she was absolutely right. Is I need to come home and relax. And she needs to feel safe. I need to feel safe. And even though my troubles were legitimate, it still was an energy brought into the house. So then when you're angry, as we've talked about, anger and anxiety, I'm sorry, anger and awareness cannot exist in the same room. And awareness is the essence of relationships. So I'm not meeting her needs, I'm not meeting my needs. I'm just in this world of anger, and it's not great.
Yep.
So that's why I made a hard and fast rule, whatever it takes to do this. If I'm angry, I just don't walk in the front door.
Yeah. David, I think we mentioned this a couple of days ago, and this is timely. When we start to ramp up in our anger, and I'd like the audience to know this, it is almost or nearly impossible not to allow the past to come into the present.
Right.
Why am I saying that? That's not psychological, but a neurophysiological phenomenon in the sense that the brain is there to your nervous system in service of protecting you. So whenever we start to get really hooked with our raw emotions, whether it's raw, severe anxiety or severe anger, or just a meltdown we have, what happens is this is our brain, we may not be conscious about this, is all unconscious, which means that, the system that beats your heart, breath, it floods you with information through sensations in your body. Sometimes it's visual, what you see, what you smell, what you hear. So very often in anger, when people rise in anger, you may not realize this, but what is going on inside the brain is you're being flooded with past memories that are identical to this.
Right.
And a lot of my patients who get very upset and they come home, or maybe they road rage or something like that, what they have is basically a stockpile of resentment, a stockpile of pressure, a stockpile of expectations they've placed on themselves. And so they come in like a garbage can, and they basically, the moment they're looking for someone to kind of dump on, and a landfill, and it's usually another human being, and that implodes on people. It sort of goes out there. But I want people to know is it's a brain thing. It's not psychological in the sense that, oh, the person's just angry. Whenever, specifically about anger, you will realize that the next time you feel anger, I want you to ask yourself is, does this sound familiar, and who else did this? Because if you had someone in your household growing up that did this, you most likely are unconsciously mimicking what you saw.
No, I agree. But also think about your kids or your spouse or your partner is that you walk in the door and you're angry. What are they seeing? And the other problem is called intermittent reinforcement. Let's say 80% of the time you're fine and 20% of the time you're angry. They don't know which person's coming through the door.
Yeah.
So the way to crank up anxiety tremendously is to be unpredictable. And so you want to be predictably calm when you walk through that door.
Yeah.
So let's say you're angry every time. That's not great, but it's almost better in a way than all of a sudden 1 or 2 times out of 10, all of a sudden you're angry. So
Yeah.
everybody's on edge. And I told you a story of this woman whose husband was in pain. And when he came out from work, the first thing he would do would criticize the family for not keeping the house clean enough.
Yeah.
So the whole hour before he came home, they were on edge. So the question to ask you is your family excited to see you when you walk through the door? Are you excited to see them? Or are they on edge? So remember, in pain, you want to generate a feeling of safety, which changes your body's chemistry. You want your family to have that same feeling of safety because it goes back and forth. You have a mirror neurons effect. So everybody feels safe. You come home, your pain drops down. You leave your work troubles outside. And you had a couple of comments here. We could talk about this for a long time, but I just want to get a little bit to the solution. So I'm going to say the concrete one, and you've got a couple more subtle things to add is just don't walk in the front door if you're angry. Just don't do it.
I think that's one, as simple as that is, it is. I have, based on that, to piggyback on what David just said here, for this is, and by the way, this is not David and I preaching to you guys, because we actually practice what we're sharing with you. And I think that's very important because we've been through a lot, just like the audience has. We all have lots of life experiences. And we're just sharing here is how can we be a better person, especially when we're in pain. We're already amped up. Our nervous system is already sensitized. And you just need to be aware of this. So now one of the things is I used to say when I was in my residency and I just had two toddlers at home. And when you open the door, the toddlers come flying at you and they're just so excited to see you and they tackle you at the legs. And when you've spent several hours from 12 to 14 hours, I know you've done longer, of course, David, just exhausted after an hour and a half drive or an hour drive and just venting about all the screw ups for that day,
Right.
doing rounds and then getting being called out that I didn't know what I was doing. So
Right.
so you know how that is. And so when I get home, I learned that once I get home, again, doesn't matter what age the child is or how old your partner is, how old you are. The bottom line is when you're at home, be aware of how your emotions are. I had this rule when I got home. If I put my hands on the door, if I entered the garage, is at that point, it is not really just my time. There's other people in the household. So my weather or my emotions will impact others. And so what I used to do is about a block or two before I got home, I had some tennis shoes. And basically I'd change, and I'd walk around or go for a quick jog. Or if you want to jog, walk, real fast pace, 2 laps. And that would just de-escalate me. That's one intervention. Here's another intervention I want you to try. If you find yourself spinning and then you get home, doesn't matter where, grocery store, work, when you get home, I want you to pause before you go into the garage or into the household. And I want you to imagine as if the part of you is still trying to catch up. So that means as you sit quietly and imagine where you were, it's almost like a shadow that's catching up to you. And then you can just pause. It's a way of actually reflecting and being present. So let's just say you went to the grocery store, you went down the street and then to the left. When you get home, you'd replay the way you were, because what that does is it brings you back from the past to the present. It's an intervention as if you can just recall where you were. So I just drove down here, this is where I got. Why do you want to do that? Because it on purpose, you play a movie in your head of where you were and where you are right now in the present moment. It helps pause you as opposed to just launch from where you were within your head. So pausing before you go in is really important. That's the bottom line. And the second thing is try exercising before you actually get into the household, especially if you know you're irritated. If you get in the household, third thing, if you get in the household, David, and audience, and you find yourself irritated and acerbic in your remarks, just kind of be looking for a fight or whatever it is,
Well,
yeah, leave the household. Leave the house. I learned this from my pops. I didn't hear him argue. What was cool is whenever he was angry, he'd say, "I'll be right back." And he went for a walk, and he'd come back.
I'll
So
be
it's
right
something
back.
I learned.
Well, yeah, I like that. The other thing I've learned the hard way, and we got to finish up here in a second, but I would never say anything unpleasant. I was pretty good about this. I didn't verbally say much of anything negative, even though I had a bad day. So I just ranted about work, etc. But what I did learn, your tone of voice makes a difference. Your body language,
Yeah,
your facial expression. So that's what I'm saying. You just can't walk in the door. You can't disguise anger. You can't hide it. It's all consuming. So you get to truly calm down. Of course, your breathing stimulates the vagus nerve, which is anti-inflammatory. Exercise, anti-inflammatory. And all of us know that, see, the problem with anger, you think you're just really clear and you're not. You're just not clear. You're offline.
Yep.
So it's a big one, especially in the presence of chronic pain, which is just brutal. Um, give your family a break. Give yourself a break.
Yep.
Enjoy your family. So anyway, enjoy your family today. Couple tools, walk around the block, some breath work, visualize what people are seeing, and you'll be surprised. The impact, we used to do this with their patients all the time, and really remarkably nice results, really relatively
Yeah.
close. So Dr.
Absolutely.
Arya, thank you.
Hanscom.
So Dr. Arya can be found at remedypain.co, and I can be found at thedocjourney.com. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Have a great
All
morning,
right.
everyone. Bye-bye.